Bellator Champions Series London this Saturday, again from London, England, from the OVO Wembley, I do believe it is called. In the main event, we have got a fight in the women's featherweight division, Mccourt versus Sarah Collins. Yeah, this is a Bellator main event. It is one of the main events of all time. Originally, again, this was supposed to be Johnny Eblen versus Fabian Edwards. Instead, it is now Mccourt and Collins because of, I believe, a Johnny Eblen injury. I mean, again, Bellator is doing what they gotta do to save this card. I believe this has to be a number one contenders fight between Mccourt and Sarah Collins. The winner of this fight will likely fight the winner of Larissa Pacheco and Chris Cyborg, which I don't think is great for the winner of this fight, but it is what it is. This is technically a number one contenders fight at 145 for Bellator. Our co-main event, Simeon Powell versus Rafael Xaiver. Xaiver is 13-7 fighting out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, actually fighting out of Germany now. We'll get to that fight. It's just, this is a very poor fight card from Bellator, I'm just going to be honest with you. But I'm glad at least they're doing it in front of a crowd. Unlike the UFC sometimes when they roll out with Gilbert Burns and Sean Brady in the Apex. Not saying it's a bad fight, just saying, hey, you can put that literally in any city in America and it'll probably sell out. But it is what it is. Folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more Bellator and some more MMA here on the channel. Yesterday we posted our UFC 306 predictions with, of course, Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley main eventing from the Sphere. Go check that out. Tomorrow we will have our week number 3 college football predictions. And then on Wednesday, we will have our NFL predictions for week number 2. All right, let's go on now to the first of this 10-fight card. Both the UFC and Bellator pulling off the 10-fight cards this Saturday. And we start things off here with Iman Almudhaf taking on Diakiese Silva. I'm going to go with Iman Almudhaf to win the fight. She's got a 100% finish rate so far in her MMA career. She's taken on Diakiese Silva, who has literally beat nobody. Now, again, I'm not going to say that Iman Almudhaf has beat anybody. She hasn't. All right, she's beat 0-1 fighter, 1-1 fighter, 0-0 fighter, 3-0 fighter, which actually looks pretty good in her first fight. I'm just kind of basing this pick off Iman Almudhaf has fought in UAE Warriors, which I think is a way better promotion than where Diakiese Silva's been fighting in Ironman MMA over in Brazil. I think, again, UAE Warriors is a more credible promotion. I think Iman Almudhaf has fought slightly better fighters, and I just think she's looked more impressive in her fights. Quick finishes on the feet. She's shown, volume and pressure and a pace once the fight is standing. And I think all around she's the better striker. Women's MMA, again, is just, it's something else sometimes, right? But this is a featherweight fight. Both these women are pretty tall for 145. Almudhaf is a 5'11". Diakiese Silva is 5'10", so two bigger featherweights. But I am going with Iman Almudhaf to go out here and put a pace in the feet, and I think she wins this fight by decision. And I think it's pretty much a result of her striking, okay? Again, don't quote me on this fight. It was like the first fight last week in San Diego. These fighters aren't well known, okay? You really don't know until this fight's gonna happen. These other fights, though, can be, again, predicted with some logic. As we go on to our next one here, Dara Kelly taking on Dmitry Hrytsenko. I'm going with the Ukrainian and Dmitry Hrytsenko. I think it's a horrible matchup for Dara Kelly, and I don't understand why Bellator is doing this, because they rarely ever do this, where they, put two prospects and have them fight against each other, just because they've been building up Dara Kelly since 2022. His first fight, again, over Junior Morgan. He wins the fight by guillotine choke in the first round, and again, he's won in Bellator 5 times. They've been slowly building him up to this point. He beat Matthias Bjorn in his last fight by guillotine choke in the first round in 89 seconds. But now you give him Dmitry Hrytsenko here, who's just very solid. Again, 9-0, undefeated, won on Bellator 300 over Justin Montalvo, which was a pretty good win for him by unanimous decision. Made his Bellator debut by beating Daniel Scatizzi. And say what you want about Scatizzi at this point of his career, but at the time, again, that was a pretty big victory for Hrytsenko. He was the underdog. He went in there and beat Scatizzi by decision. And the guy's undefeated. And I understand, again, Hrytsenko did not beat anybody prior to fighting in Bellator, with the exception, I would say, his final fight before heading into the Bellator cage. Just because, again, though, he's fighting in Ukraine regionals, he's like Ukraine's only chance since Yaroslav Amosov to actually come out that country with a actual MMA fighter, and that was not a war joke. That was just legitimately, I don't think Ukraine's got many big prospects. And they built him up right again in the Ukrainian promotion, the Ukrainian regionals. He got his way to Bellator, and now he's 2-0. And now he's in his biggest spot against SBG Ireland's own and Diakiese. And again, I am just surprised that Bellator is making Diakiese fight another up-and-coming prospect who is 9-0, who has more experience than him, and is slightly older than him as well. I just think it's a bad matchup for Diakiese. I think Hrytsenko's defensive grappling is good enough to keep himself from getting subbed by Diakiese. I like his striking a lot more than I like Diakiese striking, and I just think Dmitry Hrytsenko is the better fighter. Again, the odds do indicate that as well. I believe Hrytsenko is coming out at around a -180 favorite, which he should be on Tapology. People are going with Diakiese, but I just don't see it. If Diakiese's not able to get this fight down, which I'm not anticipating him to do so, I think Dmitry Hrytsenko has him beat on the feet, and that's why I'm going to go with the undefeated Ukrainian to win this fight by unanimous decision. Again, someone's always got to go, and I think it's going to be Diakiese's. I'm going with Dmitry Hrytsenko to win this fight by unanimous decision. He's going to stuff takedowns, he's going to keep the fight standing, and he's going to pick apart Diakiese on the feet. We go on to our next one here. Another one of SBG Ireland's guys. We're talking about Syrian Clarke taking on Zebzuni Ruiz. Now, this is what I kind of expect out of Bellator, booking guys like Syrian Clarke and Diakiese. Again, this is just the pattern that I've seen with Bellator, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have seen watching Bellator over the last couple of years. Just that, again, some of these prospects that they like to build, I'm talking about James Gallagher in the past. Hell, again, Dalton Rosta until he got to the top 5. Sumiko Inaba. They booked them right. They booked them against fighters they can beat until they get to the top 5 into the top 10 of the weight class. Hell, even Ramazan Nurmagomedov was that way. Usman Nurmagomedov was like that as well. So it's either, again, Bellator does this, again, it's like boxing. Either you get a champion out of doing this, or you get a very good contender, a very credible contender, at least record-wise, that your champion can go over. So that's what, again, I'm not saying Syrian Clarke is going to be the Bellator champion someday, but I'm just saying that's kind of just the pattern that they have followed. Hell, again, people were laughing at me last week when I said Sumiko Inaba is likely a top 5 Bellator fighter. Well, she is in her weight class, and again, I would say she's probably a fight away from fighting Liz Carmouche now. Again, I'm not saying Sumiko Inaba is championship caliber. I'm just saying the way Bellator has built her, that's probably where she's going to get eventually. She'll lose the title fight, and she'll be stuck again in that top 10 like Leah Mccourt is. I'm serious. But we will get to Leah Mccourt later on. Syrian Clarke versus Zebzuni Ruiz. Going with Syrian Clarke to win the fight. We're going with him to win this fight pretty decisively in the first round by submission. Ruiz has been submitted once before. That comes all the way back in 2016. Not really concerned about it. Ruiz has fought in the PFL before. You go back to 2022. He won a fight by unanimous decision over there. That was when PFL was going international for the playoff card. So that card was in London, England. I believe I picked Ruiz to lose that fight. I did. But since that PFL fight, he's only fought once. That last PFL fight was in August of 2022. He's only fought once since. He won by TKO in the first round in Fighting from the Sea. That's the promotion name. And he won the fight by first round TKO. Again, I don't really rate his grappling all that much. I think Syrian Clarke, again, is going to be the way better grappler in this fight. Syrian Clarke, again, undefeated so far, 9-0. 5 wins by submission in Bellator. All of his wins do come in the Bellator cage, and it just makes sense again. Just won 6 months ago in Bellator Champion Series. I think Syrian Clarke does it again. I think he completely mauls Zebzuni Ruiz. Can be Syrian Clarke to win the fight by first round submission. To our next one here, we go on to a catch weight of 175. We got Joseph Luciano taking on Stephen Hill. I'm going with Luciano to win the fight. This is a guy who's fought in one championship before. A long time ago, he fought Carlos Prates over in one championship back in 2019. It was his second professional MMA fight, fighting a 10-6 Prates. And you know how good Carlos Prates is. Prates beat him by unanimous decision. Recently, though, for Luciano, he has, he lost a fight 2 fights ago in Hex Series. He won his last fight in beatdown promotions against a 7-0 Jonathan Velouz. I don't really know how good that guy is, I'll be honest with you, because the guy he fought in Jonathan Velouz, the Pastor is his nickname, some guy from the Philippines, literally has not beat a fighter with a winning record or a fighter who has a win on their record. So I would be a little bit cautious of Joseph Luciano's record just because the guys he's fought haven't been all that great. But he's taking on Stephen Hill, who, Hill got dominated in his last fight by Mike Shipman, right? Won his 2 fights before that in Bellator. I don't know. You always get a mixed bag out of Stephen Hill. And again, I just said, be, careful about Luciano's past and his, past record. But then you look at Stephen Hill again, prior to him entering Bellator, he hadn't beat anybody either. So it's just, again, it's kind of just a mixed bag what you get out of some of these Bellator guys. I think Luciano is better as a whole, honestly. I think Luciano does have an advantage on the ground. It's a clear advantage on the ground. This is a guy who's got 6 submission victories so far in his professional MMA career. Stephen Hill does have 3 in his own right, and he does have 1 in Bellator too. But I just think Luciano's better down there. I think this guy's a really solid grappler. He's been able to go out there and get submission after submission. You know, 2 of his last 3 wins, or 2 out of his last 3 fights are by submission victories. The last one, again, being by rear naked choke in the first round, and then 2 fights ago in Eternal with a 3rd round rear naked choke. I just think Luciano's the better grappler here, and I think he's going to be able to control the fight that way. Again, we will see how good this guy truly is, because again, he has been fighting in Eternal, he's been beating guys in Eternal, but his last win in Eternal was a 7-2 fighter. And then again, I just talked about Jonathan Valuz, the Filipino guy in Beatdown Promotions. Sure, it looks good on the record, he beat a guy who is 7-0, but that 7-0 fighter has only beat 1-2, 0-1, 1-1 fighters. It's just hard to gauge truly how good the competition that Joseph Luciano has fought. Again, I'm not saying Jonathan Valuz is a complete can, he could be, but you just don't know, right? I'm taking Luciano to win this fight. I think he takes it by a 2nd round submission. I think as a whole, though, just the grappling out of Luciano is going to be better. I've never been high on Stephen Hill. Again, coming off of that loss, his last fight, give me Joseph Luciano to win the fight by 2nd round submission. We go into our next one here. Mike Shipman taking on Islam Abdul Baset. We are going to go with Shipman, the underdog, to win this fight. I am not blown away by what Islam Abdul Baset has done. This guy is 16-2. He has fought in UAE Warriors, but the guys he has fought in UAE Warriors just aren't that good. He has not lost a fight, though, since 2019, where he lost to Dijat Melan, a guy who is now 8-1, who lost to Christian Leroy Duncan in his last fight. He was the former Cage Warriors champion. Hasn't fought in 2 years, don't know what's going on there. But for Islam Abdul Baset, lost that close fight to Milan by split decision and has won every single fight since. But again, the guys he has fought just have not been the greatest in UAE Warriors. He's coming off a win just 4 months ago against a 24-18-1 Dan Vinny. And he gets Mike Shipman, a guy who has been fighting in Bellator for quite a bit now. He's had 10 pro fights in Bellator. Obviously, we just talked about Stephen Hill. Well, Mike Shipman's last win, again, is Stephen Hill by TKO at the end of the first round. Beat Charlie Ward before that, got knocked out by Gregory Babanet, beat a couple guys before that, lost to Fabian Edwards, lost to Costello Van Steens. My thing is, again, Mike Shipman just loses to really good Bellator names. Again, Babanet might be your one exception to that, I'll be honest with you. But even Babanet, 5-1 in Bellator. Again, the record doesn't look great, but he's 5-1 in Bellator. His only loss is to Costello Van Steens in his last fight by Von Fluchoke. I don't think Shipman's that bad. Again, Shipman just loses to really good fighters in Bellator. I don't think Islam Abdul Baset is that really good fighter. I think you get a striking affair in this one. Islam has been beating guys in UAE Warriors and in these various regionals over in the Middle East and in Egypt. But it's a whole different game when you get onto a guy like Shipman, who, again, I'm not saying Mike Shipman is going to be a future Bellator champion by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think this is a guy who's been in a lot of brawls. He's been in a lot of, back and forth striking fights, and I don't really know if Islam Abdul Baset has fought anybody. I don't think he has fought anybody on the level of Shipman, other than maybe Milan back in 2019, but that was, again, a Milan before his run and before his championship reign over in Cage Warriors. I think Mike Shipman is the better fighter. I think he's the better striker. I think he goes out there and wins the striking exchanges. I think he's quicker. I think he's got more power. I think Shipman wins the fight by decision. I've seen Islam Abdul Baset, from what I've seen, been in a couple wars. I think Shipman, again, is equipped for that, and I think Shipman does hit harder than a lot of these guys Baset has fought over in those regionals, and I think Shipman will win the fight by unanimous decision. So on out to our next one. We go to the lightweight division. This is a very good fight. This should be the main card opener, I do believe, but this one is a very solid fight early on this card. Archie Colgan takes on Manuel Sousa. This fight should arguably be the co-main event. And again, it's not like Archie Colgan is the most stylistically pleasing fighter. He does have some boring fights at times, but he's a 10-0 guy taking on 11-0 Manuel Sousa, who's coming off a first-round knockout victory over Tim Wilde just 6 months ago. He won in the PFL Challenger Series. This is a very good fight. Manuel Sousa is going to bring it to Archie Colgan on the feet, and I'm pumped for this one. It's a really good stylistic matchup. Archie Colgan, though, again, I would anticipate him to wrestle. Obviously, that's what he does. He's a former University of Wyoming wrestler, and that's, of course, what Archie Colgan excels in. He is a wrestler who's got heavy hands, who can throw if he needs to, but I don't think he's going to be throwing much in this one. Again, Manuel Sousa is an explosive striker. You saw his big first-round knockout victory in his last fight. Archie Colgan should look to grapple, and again, what he does, Colgan's going to wrestle you. He's really not going to look for submissions. He's going to try to go out there. He's going to try to work his ground and pound, and he's just going to try to work to improve position on the ground. You look at his last 3 victories, again, all by decision. You would like to see a finish in one of these fights, but he didn't get it. The Thibaut Gauthier fight wins the fight by unanimous decision, beats Peter Buste by unanimous decision, and beats Emmanuel Sanchez as well by unanimous decision. I would anticipate him to win this fight by decision as well against Manuel Sousa, just because, again, I don't know much about Manuel Sousa's grappling, and I think, again, it's a little iffy. And it's just a whole other game when you get in there with a wrestler like Archie Colgan, a guy who does have a decent gas tank, who is going to again be pushing the pace for the first couple rounds, who is going to be trying to put you on your back early in the fight. And again, all Archie Colgan to me has to do is bank those first 2 rounds, get takedowns in those first 2 rounds, put Manuel Sousa again back up against the fence, drag him down, and just again limit the explosiveness as a whole out of Manuel Sousa. Again, if Sousa is going to win, I think it's going to be by knockout. I think it's going to be. Again, someone's got to lose. Both these guys are undefeated. Like, there are some sneaky good fights in this card. Don't get me wrong. I was crapping on this card a lot, but there are some not bad fights, even though, again, I think this is arguably the second. Well, I think this might be the best fight on the card just because, again, I'm not too invested in Liam Mccourt versus Sarah Collins, but still, I think Colgan's a very good wrestler who can go in there, put Sousa on his back. Sousa, if he's able to keep the fight standing, might be able to shock Colgan. Again, hit him with a big shot like he did to Tim Wilde, got him with a left hook early on in that fight in the first round. But I do think as a whole, it's hard to pick against Archie Colgan. This is a guy who's been built up in Bellator. He's 7-0 in the promotion before that fought in LFA. But this is a guy, again, who has been running through competition so far in Bellator. He's been using his wrestling to his advantage. He is a ranked guy in the Bellator lightweight division. Where does he go from here? I don't know. But I remember when Bellator was on the brink of folding, and I didn't know if the PFL was going to buy Bellator or not. I remembered Archie Colgan was a guy that I wanted the UFC to go out and get, just because, again, stylistically and, fan excitement wise, he might not be the most fun guy, but this is a guy who has got very good wrestling skills, who, again, is pretty decent. And I remember I talked about this a while ago on the channel. Again, when Bellator was about to fold, I was like, oh, the UFC's going to get Colgan, and they're going to make him find the contender first. I don't know if Archie Colgan's ever going to jump over to the UFC, but again, if he stays in Bellator, this is a guy who eventually, like I was talking about earlier with Syrian Clarke, and again, Colgan is way more advanced on his track, at least, than Syrian Clarke in terms of making a run to the top 5 of the weight class. Colgan is a fight or 2 away from the belt. And this fight is actually huge for him to get there, because this is a very credible win, and it's not a washed-up 38-year-old Emmanuel Sanchez, right? Give me Archie Colgan to win. He's going to take it by decision. I think this is, again, a huge victory for his career, so give me Archie Colgan. To our next one, we go to Mark Diakiese and Tim Wilde. So we just talked about Tim Wilde getting knocked out. Well, here he is against Mark Diakiese. Just got knocked out 6 months ago, did Tim Wilde. Again, this is a guy who is willing to get in brawls in the feet. He loses sometimes on the ground when he takes on better grapplers. I'm looking at Brent Primus. Just all around a decent fighter in Tim Wilde. Mark Diakiese should have his way, though. I don't really anticipate this going the other way. Diakiese, again, opted for a more boring fight style as he went on in his UFC career. He went on, he decided to say, I'm a better wrestler than all these guys. I'm going to put my knee pads on, and I'm just going to wrestle these guys and hold them down for 15 minutes. Now, I picked up on that very quickly, and I started picking Mark Diakiese a lot. And now, again, we lost the fight with Michael Johnson, but, I won some fights picking Mark Diakiese. Slava Claus, Hadzovic, the Cal Fernandez fight in his last one, and again, Mark Diakiese is coming off a win in his last fight over Cal Fernandez. I believe that was in Brazil, right? That's on the Almeida Lewis card. It was. Again, he's coming off of a win in the UFC. And now he goes straight to Bellator to take on Tim Wilde. I don't know what fight style Mark Diakiese is going to come at you with in this fight. I know this is the reason why Diakiese did not get his UFC contract extended. It's because he wasn't putting on fun fights anymore. Like how the Rafael Fiziev fight on Fight Island was pretty fun because Diakiese was willing to strike with him. But then you realize, I can just go wrestle these guys and make 2 times my money. I'm just going to do that instead of, again, getting my ass beat or having to get into these wars and getting less money as a result of it, right? So that's why the UFC didn't extend Diakiese, right? I don't know what Diakiese does in his Bellator run here because, again, I don't know if he's fighting for his contract anymore. I don't know if he's fighting solely just to make his win bonus. if he fights anything like he did just though recently in the UFC, he should be the living hell out of Tim Wilde. Again, he should go out there, he should take this fight down, he should just out-wrestle Wilde for 15 minutes. That's what I would expect to happen. You saw Brent Primus have a lot of success on the ground against Tim Wilde, be it wasn't for that long, and that was a while ago. But Wilde is very beatable in terms of wrestling. Mark Diakiese, showed himself to be pretty solid at wrestling, at least recently in the UFC, and I'd expect him to do the same here in Bellator. He's fighting in Bellator now, he's fighting in London, he's fighting in England, his home country. I would expect Mark Diakiese to go out here and just pick up a victory. Again, I don't know in which fashion he gets it done, but Mark Diakiese's actually only 31 years old. It feels like he's been around for a while because he has, made his UFC debut back in 2016 when he was, 23 years old on the undercard for Michael Bisping and Dan Henderson #2, right? So, that's just how long this guy's been around. I kind of expected Diakiese to be 35. He's only 31, really just entering his prime. It's not a bad career move for Diakiese if he's just able to out-wrestle these guys. Hell, give him Archie Colgan next. I'm serious. Have the winner of this fight the winner of Colgan, Manuel Sousa, and boom, you have a title challenger. Now, I don't anticipate Tim Wilde to win this fight, but I think Mark Diakiese could stroll into the Bellator 155 top 10 and be one of these top 10 guys. I would like to see him and Colgan. I think that'd be an interesting stylistic matchup. Again, might not be too crowd pleasing, but I don't think it's a horrible fight. Give me Diakiese to beat Wilde, and we'll see where he goes from there. But yeah, Mark Diakiese at only 31 years old. Now, is he gonna make a title push at 155? No. Again, the Bellator 155-pound champion. No one's making it. I don't think Diakiese can beat Usman Nurmagomedov, but I wouldn't mind to see him try. So give me Mark Diakiese to win this fight by unanimous decision. As we go into the feature bout here in the light heavyweight division, Luke Traynor takes on Laurenis Urbonavicius. I probably butchered that. He's taken on, his nickname is literally Captain Lithuania. Captain Lithuania, though, is old. He's 36. Hasn't really fought anybody all that great. Literally just look through his career. He has not fought anybody that good. He's coming off a winner for an 0-0 guy who he fought 18 months ago. And now you get Luke Traynor, who should absolutely obliterate this man. Trainor's 8-1. Again, the only loss being to Simon B. Young in 2022 by unanimous decision. It is what it is. Since then, though, 3 straight wins, 2 of them by rear naked choke, and the last one being a unanimous decision victory over Grant Neal, which I think is very solid. Again, Trainor's able to get it done. He's able to get it done on both the feet and on the ground, but primarily is going to be the grappling game, and a Luke Traynor that is going to win him fights. In this one, again, though, I think Trainor's able to get this fight down, and I think Traynor is going to be able to ground and pound his way to victory in this one. Laurenis Urbonavicius, again, I don't think is that good of a striker as a whole. I think Traynor could have his way on the feet too, but also I think he could have his way on the ground as well. That's why I'm picking TKO, because hell, that could mean ground and pound, and that could also mean a knockout on the feet, right? I am not impressed by this 36-year-old Lithuanian man. It's just he hasn't fought anybody all that good. The record looks great. He's 14-1, but he's coming off a win in his 15th professional MMA fight against a fighter making their MMA debut. I mean, come on, what are we doing? Luke Traynor should win the fight. It shouldn't be all that competitive. I think he has his way on both the feet and on the ground. Again, Trainor's looked good recently after that Byung loss. And again, a loss to Simon Byung really is not all that bad. Byung, again, had his hand over in the PFL season. He did lose back-to-back fights to Shoeface and to Dubozhan Yugishidamirdov, but still, Yugishidamirdov's in the championship fight. Shoeface was a former champion. I don't think that Luke Traynor loss to Simon Byung's all that bad. I just think he has his way in this fight against a guy who I don't think is very solid. Again, this guy's 14-1, but has not fought anybody. He is the ultimate definition of a can crusher. Luke Traynor should have his absolute way. Can be Traynor to win the fight by first round at TKO. As we go on to our co-main event, I feel like we're kind of doing the same thing here. Simeon Powell takes on Rafael Xaiver. We are obviously going with Simeon Powell to win at home in England by first round knockout. This is a guy who does train out of Dublin, I believe. Does he? I could have sworn he was Great Britain top team. I don't know. Anyways, again, Simeon Powell is back for the first time since losing the PFL Europe Championship to Jakob Neto. Powell did not come back to try to fight in the 2024 season, even though the PFL did not have one of those, I believe, for light heavyweight, right? I could be mistaken, but I don't think they did. Neto went on to the American season. Simeon Powell was supposed to fight Abdullah El Rami on the last Bellator Champion Series card. Didn't happen. Abdullah El Rami, though, is going to be fighting on the Contender Series later this year against Torres Finney. I think Torres Finney actually wins that fight. But anyways, Powell's supposed to take on Abdullah El Rami. Fight never happened. Now he gets Rafael Xaiver instead. Again, Simeon Powell was the guy that the PFL wanted to win their PFL Europe Light Heavyweight Championship last year. Obviously, it didn't happen. Jakob Neto caught him and knocked him out in the second round. But Powell, it was the guy they wanted to build that thing around. I remember when the PFL Europe first announced that it was going to be a thing. The first ever poster for PFL Europe had Simeon Powell and Dakota Ditcheva on it. Obviously, the PFL got their way with Ditcheva. Powell just lost in the championship fight. Now again, the guy's only 25 years old. He is he's a heavy hand striker who is 6'5" for 205 pounds. Again, he's taking on a 6'1" Rafael Xaiver, but Powell is huge. He doesn't really use his length to his advantage at points. He does get cracks sometimes. He does leave a little bit to be desired in terms of his striking game, but I do think he's willing. I think he's going to be able to make adjustments from his last fight, and this is a good fight for Powell to get back in there, considering his last result. I think this is a good fight again to get back in the cage. He should be able to beat up on Rafael Xaiver. I think he's the way better striker. I think he's got way more power. And again, it's his first fight since losing the $100,000 fight for PFL Europe. I think Powell, again, this is a guy that the PFL/Bellator is going to take their time with. He's going to be one of these prospects that, again, they build up carefully. And I think, again, this is just the first step to that. Rafael Xaiver is 13-7, has not beaten anybody all that good. Literally, he's coming off a win over a 24-17 and one guy over an octagon. I'm not impressed. Simeon Powell becomes the second guy to knock out Rafael Xaiver, and he will get it done in the very first round. As we go on to our main event, Leah Mccourt takes on Sarah Collins. I'm actually going with Leah Mccourt to win the fight. Now, prior to the Sarah McMahon fight, I would have not taken Leah Mccourt. However, I thought Leah Mccourt actually looked good in the McMahon fight. Again, Sarah McMahon's, trying to be the aggressor. She's trying to take down Leah Mccourt often. She's pushing her back up against the fence, but Mccourt is reversing positioning well. She used a very nice judo trip/throw to get Sarah McMahon down, and that was basically the ending sequence of the fight. She gets the judo throw, and she works her ground and pound, and she finishes McMahon at the end of that first round. Sarah Collins, at the same time, I would say her best performance was that win over Pam Sorensen. How did that get set up? Fights pushed back against the fence. Sarah Collins gets the, it wasn't even a head and arm. It was just another judo throw. Throws Pam Sorensen, and boom, gets her in a crucifix, a modified crucifix, then gets an arm bar with a scarf hold. It was interesting. But again, she was able to dominate Pam Sorensen on the ground. Now, there's a big difference, I think, in beating a former Olympic wrestler in Sam McMahon than beating Pam Sorensen. Sarah Collins is coming off a split decision win over Sinead Kavanagh. I think Sinead Kavanagh is horrible at fighting, but Leah Mccourt lost to Sinead Kavanagh. And Sinead Kavanagh broke her blew her knee out in that fight. Again, that's the fight where I realized, all right, so Leah McCourt's not that good. Now, I didn't think she was ever all that great, but I was like, really? You lose to Sinead Kavanagh? And then she beats Danya Silva. She loses to Kat Zingano. I picked her to beat Kat Zingano. Then I was done picking her, so I picked Sarah McMahon to beat her. And Sarah McMahon lost the fight. I was impressed with Leah McCourt's last outing. Seriously, I was. I think, again, this fight's going to be won and lost with wrestling, and I think Leah Mccourt is able to go out here and be a very good defensive wrestler, keep Sarah Collins from taking her down, and I think Leah Mccourt has her beat on the feet. I'm taking Leah Mccourt to beat Sarah Collins. I'm taking her to win the fight by unanimous decision. I don't think Sarah Collins is able to have her way on the ground. Leah Mccourt, like she was able to against a fighter like Sorensen. She had a very close fight with Sinead Kavanagh. I think McCourt's able to keep this fight standing. And once Leah Mccourt has this fight just on the feet, she should be able to outbox Sarah Collins to victory. I think Sarah Collins is a little bit one-dimensional. She's really just a grappler, and I don't really think her striking game is all that great. And also, I don't think Sarah Collins really, again, she hasn't really fought anybody all that good, except for Sinead Kavanagh, if you consider her good. Her run prior to Bellator, which was, again, Sarah Collins only had 5 pro fights, and only 2 of them are in Bellator, Sorensen, Kavanagh, and then 3 fights in regionals in Eternal and Hex prior to that against fighters who had never had a professional mixed martial arts fight. Yeah, give me Leah Mccourt to win the fight. I think she outstrikes Sarah Collins. I think she keeps the fight on the feet. I think, again, her defensive wrestling looked really good against Sarah McMahon. Even when she got taken down in that fight, Leah Mccourt was able to build back up to her base and get back to her feet. I like that a lot. I don't think Sarah Collins is going to be able to hold her down. I think Mccourt, even if she does get taken down, is going to get right back up. And I just think it's going to be a tough night in the office for Sarah Collins. So it's going to be Leah Mccourt to win her first ever Bellator main event in London, in England, in her home country. She will beat Sarah Collins by unanimous decision. So folks, thank you all for watching our Bellator Champion Series London predictions here on the channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more Bellator and more MMA here on the channel. We'll be back next week for PFL Mana predictions, and after that, PFL Europe does return as well. I don't believe this is another Bellator card for another 2 months, so it is what it is. But folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to check out our UFC 306 predictions posted yesterday, and make sure to join us tomorrow and on Wednesday for some college football and NFL predictions as well. Folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more, and Mamba forever.